Hey guys, welcome back to the floor of the International 4 Zyori from Beyond the Summit here, and we're joined by Nahaz. Nahaz, how are you, sir?
I'm great, and it's nice to meet you.
You as well. Tell us about your TI4 experience.
It's wonderful so far. So in the bizarre chain of events that's led me to my current extremely strange hobby, I've met and interacted with a bunch of people from the community online, and the biggest thrill is to be able to put faces to names, because despite some of the things that go on in pub matches, the majority of people in this community are just incredible people. They're smart. They're people that have a passion for a game that I think is just tremendous. And putting faces to names and just shaking hands has been the favorite thing so far.
Yeah, it's been a pretty fun event. Tell us about you as a stats person. For you, this is purely a hobby because you have a career outside of Dota, unlike us other esports lowlifes here.
So I am actually a professional stat geek and an amateur Dota stat geek. I'm a professor of economics. I'm currently at the University of Western Ontario, which is just a great place. They offered me a great position 2 years ago, and I'm very happy there. But I got into Dota around TI1 when I first heard TobyCast, and was hanging out in a bunch of Twitch streams, and Shivers in particular, and would throw out these random factoids in chat. And one day, she asked if I wanted to come and throw up those random factoids in a game, and I did. And I, for reasons that I still can't fully articulate, found it incredibly fun, and more importantly, found interacting with the people that I met in Dota tremendously interesting. And so I kept doing it. I mean, it's a game that has unbelievable strategic depth, and why I do what I do. I'm a professor. I do it because I love strategy and I love interacting with talented young people, and the Dota community has both of those things in unbelievable quantities.
We certainly do. What do your students think about you as a statsman? Do they know about your hobby? Is it a secret?
It's becoming an open secret. I imagine after this event it might be a little more of an open secret, but we'll see. My first teaching job after I got a PhD in economics was teaching basic statistics.
Okay.
And I found the material unbelievably boring, and I thought my students would as well. And so I decided that I wasn't going to teach statistics, I was going to teach baseball and poker.
Okay.
And so the Dota thing actually has more in common with that than you might think. I did baseball statistics for a long time as a hobby.
That's the K-Poptosis background. He was into
Really?
baseball stats, and that's what led him into Dota stats.
So I have not met Brian personally. He's one of the top 5 people I'm looking forward to meeting at this event. But I often, when I was doing baseball stats, would catch myself wishing that I was back sort of on the ground in the era where people first started reading Bill James's writings. It was an era where people were first starting to realize that the traditional statistics like home runs and RBIs and batting average weren't really great measures of offensive production, and there were a lot of interesting problems that came from that. And I think Dota is at that same point. People have understood for a long time, but have really started to internalize now that those 2 big numbers at the top of the screen are not the score.
Yeah.
And our big job as casters and stats people is to inform people about the state of the game and entertain. And most importantly, the biggest problem that I have with what we do is we spend a lot of time talking about hero matchups and breaking down lanes. We don't spend enough time talking about teams and players. And there's a reason for that. I mean, because everybody that watches a pro sports broadcast knows basically what a first baseman does.
Right.
Most people that watch Dota broadcasts, a lot of them don't know what Shadow Demon does in a lane, and that's fine. But still, if you pay attention to other sports broadcasts, the most important thing that they do is they tell stories about the players and teams. And again, I go back to that theme I brought up earlier, that as I've interacted and met and chatted online with so many people, these players and these teams have interesting stories. They've learned a lot, they've improved a lot, they change over time, and I find that fascinating. And I think a lot of fans out there would like to know those stories. And so in my own little way with numbers, those are the stories I try to tell when I highlight records. And it's gratifying to me that over time, as I've had dialogues with some of the major casters, that they've moved in that direction too, and they start talking more about the players and teams, because if arguably some people would say that we've already succeeded as a sport, I don't think we have.
We're getting there.
I don't think we've reached anywhere near the potential that this game has in the broader community, both impact-wise and economically. And I think the way that we're going to get there is by promoting these incredible people that choose to play our game.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think expanding that story is so important. That's something that free-to-play helped to do a little bit, at least at a baseline level. And even Valve has been doing it here at this event. Today and yesterday they had those kind of pre-roll videos where they interviewed the teams and talked about what they've been doing. So baby steps, but we're getting there.
Hey, look, that is something that I couldn't agree with more. The stewardship and care that Valve has shown of this game. Dota is a house. And we are so lucky that the owner of that house has seen fit to give us all keys. And that we can all participate at such a deep level. And over time, there are more and more of these rooms to discover and explore. And we're getting keys to almost all of them. And that, it's such a...
it's a great analogy.
An amazing thing to me that a company would have the confidence and the vision to do that, because it's not necessarily the typical business model.
Certainly not.
But it's the future. I am a professional economist, and I really believe that. I believe deeply in what Valve is doing with this game, and I wouldn't do this as a hobby if I didn't.
Absolutely. So one last thing I want to ask you about is, what do you look for in a Dota statistic? As you mentioned, some stats are better than others. What's the good stuff? What do you look for a good Dota statistic?
Well, the most important thing is that it be clear and informative and interesting. I mean, I think that in all things, esports and media, the biggest sin that you commit is to be boring. And so I don't want to be boring. It goes back to my very first days teaching basic stats, right? I don't want to be boring. The other thing is, I come from a bit of a different background. Statistics was invented 100, 150 years ago by guys that wanted to do lab experiments. I work with economic statistics, and so for us, our data is messy. There's never clean causality. And so it just, you take for granted that it's never a simple matter of A causes B. There's always a bit of feedback, right? So when people talk about item win rates and such being misleading, that okay, such and such hero has a huge win rate when they complete mech by 20 minutes. Okay, yeah, that's just because their team is snowballing. But there's still some information content, and there's some content to the viewer that may not know the state of the game, because you can't judge. And so a good statistic, to me, strikes a balance between telling a story for people that are really deeply interested in the game and informing the more casual viewer. That's what I'm always thinking about, because I want this game to be inclusive. I want to be, you know, if you look at statistics in baseball, they're such an integral part of the way that fans interface with the game. They give people another link. They're a way to draw people in. And I think we can do that with Dota. People make fun of all the stuff that happens in Twitch chat, right? But there's energy there. And we can use, people are so hungry for different ways to interface with our game. We can use that energy for something good. And I mean, it sounds grandiose, but that's what I try to do. I try to put up a stat that gives people another way to interface with the game and enjoy the game, period.
Well, as a caster, I appreciate your efforts, sir. Where can people find you, social media, if they want to follow more about your stats work?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter, at Nahaz Dota. I thought Twitter was stupid before I started doing Dota, and now I love it. I tweet stats all the time.
It's a lot more fun once you have a following.
It really does. It's awesome. And so I occasionally will write things on Join Dota. You interviewed Ash a moment ago, and I'm on her stream, probably be on your stream at one time or another. I really do, before I even started doing this, I lurch around Twitch all the time, because even then I really was impressed with all the different personalities that play this game. And so, hey, you know, if you're interested, get in touch. nahazdota@gmail.com. Send me an email. There have been so many great guys like that Phage guy, right, who've come along and just said, hey, I'm interested in doing stats. And that's been so much fun, right? And of course, I have to throw a shout out to Shiver in particular, because without her, first of all, nobody appreciates, she is one of the best casters out there, period. And without her, I wouldn't be doing a hobby that's, odd as it is, has brought me a great deal of personal joy.
I can say Brian K-Pop-Tosis Heron will second the notion. Shiver was also the one that kind of gave him his foot in the door. So, yeah, a lot of love goes towards Shiver from the BGS.
K-Pop, I love you, man. What he does is amazing.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time, man. I really appreciate it. And, yeah, and we'll have more interviews coming for you guys here on the floor of the International 4.